Hey folks, it's Greg and Janet with Strange RV Tours. Today we are in Wylie, Texas, and we're going to check out a house where a infamous axe murder took place. Back in 1980, I was in 8th grade, and we were living in Parker, Texas, which is a small, kind of a sleepy, suburban, kind of country town. It's best known because the mansion, South Fork Ranch from the TV show Dallas, that's where that home actually is, in Parker. And so we were about maybe 20 minutes away, 15-20 minutes away from a city called Wylie, that Janet and I later moved to. Well, I'm in 8th grade and I see on the news that there was an axe murder in Wylie, Texas. Shocked the heck out of me and my parents. Everybody in our neighborhood thought for sure that there was a crazed axe murderer running around, chopping people up, and we were all scared. We didn't know what to do. Well, turns out there's kind of a twist to the whole story. The murder involved a lady named Candice Montgomery, and the victim was a Mrs. Betty Gore, who had a husband named Alan. And apparently Candice Montgomery had been having an affair with Betty Gore's husband. And at the time, nobody knew the details of the murder, just that this lady's body had been found in a home in Wylie with 41 chops from an axe. And Betty and Candice went to the same church in Lucas. Is it a Methodist church?
First United Methodist.
First United Methodist Church.
They were in choir together. I mean, they babysat each other's kids. They were friends.
They were friends. And they both had children. And the day that the murder took place, Candice Montgomery was taking care of one of Betty's daughters. And her daughter, Candice Montgomery's daughter, and one of Betty Gore's daughters were playing at the Montgomery residence, and Candice had some chores to do. So she ran first to church, I believe, dropped off some food for some event that was coming up at their church function, and then she went over to Betty Gore's house. And at Betty Gore's house, she was going to pick up a swimsuit for Betty's daughter, who was playing with her child at their home. When she got to the house, she was invited in, and Betty Gore and her sat at the kitchen table and started having a talk. And in the middle of this conversation, Betty Gore looks at Candice Montgomery and said, "Are you having an affair with my husband?" And Candice was kind of taken aback by it. She was. She did have an affair with her husband, but supposedly that affair had ended several months earlier. And so anyways, Betty Gore got up from the table, walked through the laundry room, into the garage, and came back into the laundry room, heading towards the kitchen where Candice was sitting, the kitchen dinette area, carrying an axe. And Betty Gore decided she was going to kill Candice Montgomery. And somehow during the scuffle, Candice Montgomery was able to get the axe away from Betty Gore and swung it back at her, hit her, and split her head open. Ended up hitting her in the face with the axe, I think a total of 28 times.
Gross.
She had 41 axe wounds on her. And you can't imagine how crazy this is. Not only that somebody would actually do something like this, but to do it to a friend, even if it was, I guess, self-defense. But after it happened, Candice Montgomery ended up cleaning up in the Betty Gore's home. Betty Gore's husband was out of town at the time. He was out of town. Alan was out of town at work. And after Candice cleaned up, she was wearing sandals, I believe, that day. And she had a cut on one of her toes. I think it was her big toe. And she wrapped it. And she went back by the church. And after stopping at the church, went back home. And when somebody asked her about the cut on her foot, she said that she had cut her foot on a door, a screen door going in or out of her home. And needless to say, Alan Gore later that night couldn't reach his wife, obviously. So he called some of the local neighbors and had the neighbors go check on her. They got into the house, and as working their way through the house, they came across the bloody, gory scene of Betty Gore's death. Now, the crazy part about this whole thing is that everybody thought it was just a random murder. Well, it turned out Candice had committed this crime.
Right, and left the baby there.
Yeah.
The baby was there crying by herself.
Yeah, the youngest child of the Gores was still in the home late at night, crying in a, what do you call it?
Crib?
A crib. And
Playpen?
Candice Montgomery was arrested for the murder of Betty Gore. And when it went to trial, she surprised everybody and claimed self-defense. Now, Candice Montgomery's attorney became infamous from this case. His name was Don Crowder, and he became a very successful attorney, partially based on this case. One of the details of the case was the affair between Candice Montgomery and Alan Gore supposedly took place at a motel called the Como Motel, which is over in Richardson, Texas, not too far away. And it's basically, if you grew up in this area, it's known as a no-tell motel. It's a low-budget rental motel that you really wouldn't want to stay in.
It's like by the hour.
Now this was years ago. Now the motel may be beautiful today. It may have been redone. I don't know. But anyhow, that was the details of the case. They ended up making two Dallas journalists wrote a book about the murder called Evidence of Love that became a big bestseller. And the book went on to be turned into a movie called Killing in a Small Town. And it starred Barbara Hershey as Candice Montgomery. Candice Montgomery later moved, I think she moved to the Atlanta area. Betty Gore's husband actually got remarried relatively quickly. And he's divorced again.
Yeah.
And Betty Gore's parents raised the children.
Yeah.
So, but this is the home where this murder took place. And I guess, would you call it a murder if it was self-defense? I don't know. But when I was growing up in this area, this was a scary deal. I mean, we all, we were locking our doors at nights and having nightmares about axe murderers running around. And Wylie, this area of Texas, in Wylie, Texas, is a small town. And it was basically known as a football town. And still is known as a football town. They've won the state championship several times. Janet and I purchased a home here in Wylie, just less than a mile from here.
Yeah, our neighborhood looks just like this neighborhood. And it's like house after house.
Yeah, and this murder happened in 1980, and of all days in 1980, on Friday the 13th in 1980. So, but it's a nice home in a nice neighborhood. They do have a sign out front saying private property, no trespassing. I'm sure they have lots of people come by and want more details. The house, the garage is behind the house, on the back side of the house. And if you were parking your car in the garage, after you got out of your car, you would walk to the home through the laundry room where the murder took place. And then you would walk from there into the kitchen. And that's where they were meeting that day.
Yeah, see, our laundry room was right before the garage, but you walked into a hallway.
Yeah.
But theirs is directly into the kitchen.
And I'm not sure if a lot of the homes here in Wylie, Texas, in this neighborhood were built by Fox and Jacobs. This was probably a Fox and Jacobs home also, but I'm not certain of that. But they're doing construction, some type of construction, pulling out some trees or something in the backyard. That's why you see the big tarp there in the front yard. But anyhow, Hope you guys enjoyed this video of a little dark secret here in North Texas, in the small sleepy town of Wylie, Texas.
Strange RV tours will take you places with Greg and Janet's smiling faces. You might see a crazy flavored soda review or some tips to fix your RV too. So come along, won't you join us, friend, as we discover what's around the bend. Just sit right back in your easy chair. Strange RV Tours is on the air. Strange RV Tours is on the air.